They say some guns are born crooked, not by fault of the smith, but because hell itself breathes into the metal. Billy the Kid's revolver spat lead like it was spitting sin, and on that red afternoon in Tularosa, it spoke loud, too damn loud. If you're into Old West legends told the way they ought to be, with dried blood on the boots, eyes squinting against the sun, and promises whispered between shots, then drop a like, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments what town you're watching from, partner. Now hold on tight, because this story's about to kick off. The sun was brutal, the kind of heat that cooks the leather before it burns the skin. In Tularosa's main street, time crawled slow. Only the wind moved fast, shoving dust and fate between the creaking planks of saloons and the wary eyes of folks who still had something left to lose. Billy the Kid leaned in the shade of a warehouse, cigarette dangling from his lips, hat pulled low. He wasn't expecting much beyond the boredom of the afternoon and the cheap taste of tobacco until he heard it. First, the bell, then the cry. Across the street, a kid was running, dirty, ragged, desperation in his eyes. Behind him, two men, tall, beards like wire, eyes dry as bad soil. One carried a gun in hand. The other had blood smeared on his chin. Billy watched, silent. He waited for the right moment. When the kid tripped in the dust and fell, the man's gun rose, slow, like it was a ritual. And then, enough. Billy's voice wasn't loud, but it cut the silence like a knife through hide. The men stopped, turned slow. One grinned, missing a tooth. "This ain't your business, stranger." Billy stepped forward. The light hit the handle of the gun at his belt, black, dull, like it swallowed the sun. "This revolver here, it's killed for less." The kid scrambled back, panting. The men didn't budge, and then everything froze. The wind died. The whole town seemed to hold its breath. A sharp crack split the air. The first man dropped. The second tried to run. Bad move. Another shot. Another body in the dust. Billy spat out his cigarette, didn't glance at the kid, didn't look at the bodies, just turned and walked. But that afternoon, something shifted. The kid didn't run. He stood up, grabbed the revolver from the dirt, and aimed it at Billy. "You killed my pa." Billy stopped. The silence returned, heavier. "Then come on, kid, come find out why they call this the devil's revolver." The gun trembled in the boy's hand. Too small for so much hate, but hate doesn't weigh much at first. It just burns. Billy turned slow, the sun framing his shoulders like embers on a wooden cross. The kid kept the barrel 26 barrel aimed, but his eyes were already wavering. "I didn't pull your pa into sin, kid. I was just the last name he read before the end." Boy hesitated. The gun fell into the dust with a hollow thud. Billy walked over, crouched down, and pushed the gun back to him. "Learn this, kid. Nobody walks clean from a pulled trigger. Not you. Not me." Without another word, Billy stood and walked off. Down the street, the town's eyes trailing him like shadows, but that wasn't the end. It was just the start. 2 days later, in a lonesome cabin on the fringes of Lincoln County, Billy got a crumpled note from an old stagecoach driver. No signature, but it reeked of death. "Billy, the man you gunned down was Judge Malone's son. Wants your head nailed to his gate. Says he'll buy every bounty hunter in New Mexico. Run if you want to die old, or come back if you want to settle up with the devil." Billy folded the paper, struck a match, and burned it between his fingers. The flames climbed fast. The wind carried the ashes. No fear in the gunslinger's eyes, just resolve. He knew what it meant. A manhunt, the biggest yet. And at the end of the trail, the judge, a man with a honeyed tongue and dirty hands, hiding the smell of poorly washed gunpowder behind the law. Billy saddled his horse, tucked the revolver at his waist, and rode south. Not for revenge, not for justice, but because deep down he wanted to look the judge in the eye and ask if hell still remembered the face of its own smith. The road's dust rose under the hooves, and the Old West once again held its breath. Judge Malone didn't wear a star on his chest. He wore a black suit, carried a silver-tipped cane, and a crucifix hung loose around his neck, like God had long given up on weighing his soul. His courtroom was a fortified ranch, carved into a dry canyon, guarded by men who'd sell their souls for whiskey and a couple of silver coins. When he heard Billy the Kid was crossing the south like a starving shadow, he didn't flinch. He smiled, not fear, pleasure. "Bring me the boy," he said, spitting tobacco onto the carpet. "I want to hear the sound of his revolver in my marble hall." Meanwhile, Billy galloped through silent towns. In each, he left a body and a legend. Outlaws tried to ambush him for gold or glory. None rode again, but the biggest hurdle hadn't shown its face yet. It was waiting ahead, and it was an old friend. On the trail to Fort Garland, a figure leaned against a withered pine. Hat low, poncho worn, a scar slicing his face like lightning in a clear sky. "Jesse Reddin," Billy muttered, pulling the reins. The man looked up, crooked smile, steel eyes. "They say the kid's become a legend. Came to see it for myself." They stared for long seconds, no anger, just unsettled debts. Reddin had been Billy's partner in the old days, shared saddles, dust and sin, but he'd sold Billy for a fistful of dollars to the El Paso sheriff. Now he wore a necklace of dead sheriff's stars on his belt. "The judge paid good to bring you in. But it ain't the gold I'm here for, it's the name. Yours." Billy dismounted slow, feet firm on the ground, fingers close to the holster. "Then draw, traitor. Let's see if the devil still calls you brother." The wind hushed. The whole forest stopped to watch. 2 shots, 1 scream. The smoke danced in the... As Billy stood tall, Reddin fell to his knees, hands clutching his chest. Before he toppled, he grinned. "He's waiting, Billy. The judge. He already knows your end." The body hit the dirt. The earth swallowed the old debt. Billy picked up the traitor's poncho, slung it over his shoulder, and rode on. Heavier, closer. The devil's revolver hadn't sung its last note yet. But the final tune was coming, and it'd be played with fire. It was night when Billy reached the Malone Ranch. The sky red as a wound, the wind hot as death's breath. The wooden walls rose like rotted teeth. Torches flickered above, and the guards whistled to fend off fear. But nobody slept easy, knowing hell itself was riding in. Billy dismounted at the edge of darkness. A single jingle of spurs announced him. The ranch's door opened, like the place itself knew. The judgment wasn't coming from a courtroom anymore. It was coming from the revolver's cylinder. Inside, Judge Malone sipped brandy under a chandelier of candles, walls lined with stuffed heads, outlaws, folks who aimed too high. Billy walked in. No rush, dead silence, just the creak of the floorboards, the crackle of the hearth, and the distant sound of death holding its breath. "Billy," the judge said, folding his fat hands on the table, "was expecting you. Brought the devil with." "You?" Billy didn't answer, just drew the holster and set the revolver on the mahogany table between them. "Didn't come to talk, came to collect. You set a boy against me. Now I want you to feel the weight of the lies you built." The judge stood, smiling like a snake. Behind him, 6 armed men stepped from the shadows, splinters of hate and steel. Billy didn't move, picked up the revolver like it was a rosary, and started praying with gunfire. The room turned to a storm. Shots, screams, shards. 2 fell before they could lift an arm. The 3rd tried for the window, didn't make it halfway. Billy danced through the shadows like a ghost. The revolver spat thunder. His eyes, 2 black holes full of memory, 2 left, then 1. Then just the judge, stumbling back. The gunslinger stopped before him. The judge trembled. Words fled like rats from a sinking ship. I was right. You are the devil." Billy looked at the gun's handle, slow, almost reverent. "I'm just the mirror, and you, the crooked reflection." One last shot. Silence. The smoke rose. The candle died, and with it, the last hope of redemption. In that cursed house, Billy walked out the way he came. No hurry, no glory. The ranch burned behind him. But the sky was clearing. The devil's revolver was quiet. For the first time in a long while, they say that dawn, the fire at the Malone Ranch could be seen for miles. Looked like a fallen star or a warning. The judge, the men, the walls, all turned to ash. And Billy, the man with no home or law, vanished into the dawn's dust. But a good legend doesn't fade, it spreads. Some swear they saw him days later in Abilene, drinking cold coffee and asking for the road to El Paso. Others say he crossed the border, vowing to hang the revolver on an altar in Sonora. And some whisper, low, like they're scared to wake ghosts, that Billy wasn't a man anymore. He was just the gun, that the revolver rode on alone now, choosing trembling hands, seeking eyes that didn't yet know the cost of pulling the trigger. The kid from Tularosa? Nobody knows. Maybe he grew up with Billy's shadow in his heart. Or maybe he heeded the lesson and tossed the gun in the river along with the weight of vengeance. In the end, what remained was the silence. A silence that haunts empty saloons and lonesome trails, the kind that comes before a shot. And if one day on some forgotten road you hear footsteps behind you, don't run, pray, because it might just be the devil's revolver looking for a name to carve into its cylinder. If this story lit a spark in you, drop a like to keep the fire going. Subscribe to the channel to catch every new Old West legend. And tell me in the comments, which other outlaw do you want to see around here? Jesse James, Doc Holliday, or maybe a nameless vigilante? The next story's already in the crosshairs. Till then, keep your hand off the holster.